morning, everyone. It's Saturday, which means it's time for yet another Salty Saturday morning. I am your host, Mr. Kadish. Get it right. And joining me, as always, on this fine Saturday morning is our fantastic panel of nerds, starting with Matt Vader 74. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, Mrs. Kadish? I guess. No, I don't know.
Hey,
I'm not feeling very funny right now.
We're gender non-conforming here on the Salty Saturday morning. So
okay.
Yeah. How you feeling?
Good. Do you want the real answer or the husband answer? No, I don't know.
Gotta do real talk on Saturday.
I'm feeling like shit this morning, Matt. How's that sound? Not feeling good at all. Had a rough night, but I'm here. We're gonna be okay. Got to let the drugs kick in. So,
speaking of rough nights, we got Culture Casino joining us today.
Wow, that was
that is because our normal co-host Brian is basically on death's doorstep in his hospital bed right now. But Culture was kind enough to step in. How you doing today, Culture?
I'm fantastic. I love being here. You know that. So am I the representation today?
What'd you do to Brian, Culture?
I didn't do anything.
You don't believe him.
Just a reminder, poison is a woman's weapon. So
yeah, dudes don't usually do that. So yeah.
And you're not going to throw the cops off by using it, just FYI.
Yeah,
throw them off. Well, all right.
Yeah. Hey, did you guys hear about the Long Island Long Island serial killer got caught?
No.
They caught him off of DNA from a half-eaten pizza. It was crazy. Anyway, speaking of half-eaten pizza, Tom Connors from Midnight's Edge is here.
Good Lord.
That was a segue.
Well, I like to give the best intros, as you know, Tom. I'm the best.
The best. Oh, man.
The best.
Indeed. And our special guest, who I'm sure is already regretting his decision to come on this morning, all the way from Pop Culture Crisis, Brett Dasovic.
Dasovic, yes, you got it. You got it right there. That makes me, if I'm a character in this, that makes me the mysterious new kid in school. That's in this genre. I'm the mysterious new kid in school because I've never been here before.
So did everybody watch Taylor Swift for homework?
What?
No. Look, we get a lot of crap for talking about her on the channel because we do a lot of general pop culture, and I think it's hilarious. It's almost fascinating, just the hold she's pulled over like so much of American culture right now. You can't really look at the news without some aspect of the media trying to fit her into their aspect of the culture, whether it's football, whether it's movies, whether it's music. It's kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah, she's this generation's Michael Jackson. Like she's that level of superstar.
Madonna.
No, I'd go Michael Jackson. Like, you have no idea how huge Taylor Swift is.
Michael Jackson has talent.
Wait a minute. I know how big she is. I've been doing the same thing Brett's been doing. I've been talking about her all the time. You can't escape anything from her.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
If you her movie sold $100 million in pre-sale tickets, 150 or something like that.
Something dumb.
Absolutely bonkers.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, and her think about this. Her economic impact in this country just with the concert tour alone was over $1 billion.
It was like 2 billion if you count overseas or something like that.
Yeah,
it's
ridiculous.
Kind of perfect. Like when people were trashing on Barbie and they were saying like, look, we need a movie for women that's actually for women rather than shoving them into superhero movies where women might go with their boyfriends to kind of appease them, but it doesn't actually interest them. And they give them a movie that's actually for them, whatever your thoughts are on the misogyny of the film or not. If you actually make things for women to watch, they will go out and they will go out and watch it.
This is true. My wife has been appeasing me for decades. And when Barbie came out, she went with our granddaughters, and her mom. So and I didn't have to go. So it was nice.
Oh my God.
Whole fucking theater full of them watch. Oh my God. Run! Run!
Isn't that movie like 2.5 hours long too? Or like
they even left songs out.
You know, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that since the original Twilight started.
Wow. Or Star Wars, yeah.
Yeah, four shows a day. Right now, it's globally in 8,000 theaters.
That's insane.
I mean, It's bonkers, Patrol. It is.
What was the theater count in America? It was like 3,800 or something like that, right? I thought they'd go at least 4.
Well, okay, but they're limited to the number of AMC theaters that there are.
Okay.
That's
right?
not just AMC though. I got our local theater showing it too. Culture.
That's a special thing because you're in a location with no AMCs. But it's like in the UK, I think specifically it's Odeon theaters, and in go ahead.
And then Beyonce's doing the same deal in December.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask how many of these other acts are like trying to get on the movie theater concert type train now.
I think they have it at the high end, like the reclining seat theater where we go in Maryland here. They have it at that theater, but they do a lot of those kind of specialty screenings. Like right now, there's like 5 or 6 of the screenings are new films, newly released films, maybe up to 7. And then on the weekends they'll do a lot of showings. Like they're doing a lot of old horror right now is being shown because it's October and stuff like that.
Well, guys, as much as I would like to keep talking about Swiftie news, I do have to shout out our superstars here on the podcast. We got William Forbus, who's still at the top spot. We got Scotty Dub, Bob Dorsey. Special shout out for the AstroNerdBoy. We miss you guys. We hope to see you again in the chat soon. And of course, our loyalist, Joker Voice and Mexican Iron Man. I know Mexican Iron Man is in transit right now, which is why he can't join us on stream. But we really do appreciate all you guys. And speaking of which, Jillian N., who's one of our top gifters, already dropped 5 gifted subs before we even got going. So big shout out to Jillian N. for those subs. And we also have WG as one of our top gifters as well. And want to give a quick shout out to everyone in the chat real quick. So we have Anthony Mark, who's always the first one here. We got Novus Tullius. We got Danny's mom, Penny. We have Anima Confusa, our trivia queen. We have Truth is Forever, Kocho Dragon, Chappie, who is now over on Rumble. Thrasher613. We got Wendy Hunter, of course, Jillian N. Thank you so much for those gifted subs, Jillian. Studio Lau, Gavin Blackburn, Mr. Super Sticker Extraordinaire himself. Quantum Cat, 76. We got BLT, and who else do we got here? Mighty Orbots is in the house. Good to see you, Mighty Orbots. Jeremy Turner, D Subversion is here as well. Mark Santos, and Scotty Dub is actually in the chat. Good to see you, Scotty Dub. Sean Stackhouse is here. Got Culture Casino, of course. Regis is red. Doomed is in the chat. Awesome one. Good to see all you guys. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We are very happy to have you in the chat. And with that being said, we actually have some super chats to get to.
Ooh.
Oh, look at this. Now StreamYard is telling you that when people gift memberships for a change, that is a great update.
4 days ago, this happened.
Fantastic. I love how StreamYard is always on top of this stuff. All right. Jillian N. gifted 5 Salty Nerd podcast memberships. And keep in mind, everyone, that once you're gifted a membership, you can go to our channel, check out the members only playlist, and see all of our members content. Most of it is just Matt Vader being Matt Vader that we can't put out publicly. Otherwise, YouTube will take our channel down. But it's worth checking out, and really appreciate your generosity, Jillian. That is fantastic stuff. Then we got Shane H. Wilder for $4.99. Where are my crisis actors at? This is better than stupid fireball in the sky. And
Shane, buddy.
Yes. Is he one of your regulars, Brett?
He is. He's a regular for us. Shane, it's good to see you, man.
Welcome.
That is awesome.
That's right. We're in mid eclipse right now, aren't we?
Yes.
That's right. Yep.
Yep.
And Scotty Dub, major superstar, major contributor, still undefeated in terms of overall contributions to the show. For $49.99. Brett, great to see you among my beloved salty nerds, loving pop culture crisis too, my man. Please help my man, Mr. Kadish, pay a visit to Timcast IRL. Oh, that'd be cool. By the way, has anyone else told you that you have a Charlie Day thing going on? Bless the salty nerds.
There have been memes. I have been memed with Charlie. I take it as a compliment, I take it as a compliment. Maybe one day I'll reenact the kind of, the conspiracy board scene. Right?
That'd be great.
Meme. Maybe I'll do that.
That could literally apply to pretty much anything you guys at the Cast Castle talk about, that whole conspiracy board. Just have like graphene at the center. And then,
Ian would love that.
Going out from there.
Ian would love that.
I'm a big fan of his. He's in the best movie ever made, Pacific Rim. So that's good stuff. I'm a big fan.
He's also in the best show ever made. All of a sudden. And Black Magnum for $5. Soap opera has been appealing to women for over 50 years. I've not seen a soap opera with a They Live style ball busting fight scene.
Oh man, that would be fun.
Somebody needs to make that. Maybe if they put that in the Marvels, people would actually show up to watch it.
Do soap operas have like the same audience now? Because it's like we're in an age now where everybody's working, right? Like there's just less people at home during the day.
There aren't
You know?
a whole lot of them left. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a couple, but like they're not like they used to be. No.
Like I still see that, like they'll still throw those headlines in, like on Yahoo or anything like that. It's like Rena Sofer is back on General Hospital for the first time in however many years, and it's like this soap's been around since like before I was alive twice over. So it's crazy.
And also, we want to give a big shout out to criticalist.com. Brett, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is kind of the anti-Rotten Tomatoes. It's a free speech forward movie review app that we've been using. It's really fantastic. It's got a great user interface and a lot of fun. And they're not going to cancel you for having an opinion on a certain type of movie. So they've been just starting up these past couple months, and we want to give them a big shout out because they've been supporting the podcast. But it is an addictive app. We're just going to warn you. Vader and Alex have been posting on that thing nonstop. First thing I see on Vader's screen when I walk into the office every morning is he's got his Criticalist account open, and yeah, he's going through there and putting movie reviews up. So
How long are the reviews that you write for stuff?
Not super long. Not super long.
Yeah, like I find that like for me, I tweet a lot when I'm watching stuff, and like I don't do well in like long form paragraphs.
Yeah.
I have to like spew my thoughts out like a little bit at a time as I'm going down. And then sometimes when I'm actually doing like a video review, I'll have to use those tweets as like the baseline for my thoughts.
Right.
When I try to write them down and come back to them, they're never as like fully developed as they would be if I was actually posting them.
The cool thing about Criticalist is they have like different sliders that you can use. So like even if you don't like to write, you can still give thoughts on like the level of like political messaging that's in a movie, the level of adult content, the level of bad language, like stuff like that. So and you can add like tiny notes in each one of those sections. So instead of having to write a full review, you can just kind of like leave scattered thoughts that are all organized for the people who check out your review.
Yeah, they'll take anybody on there that my reviews are mostly like real short, just a couple paragraphs, more like something I would write on Twitter with the things. But there's other people on there that'll write 5,000 word essays.
8,000 word essays.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, there are all kinds over there. It's nice. So
yeah, but guys, speaking of Charlie Day style conspiracies, let's talk about Bigfoot, who has resurfaced after a number of years being camera shy. This story blew my mind when Vader kind of told me about it. So there was a train that was, I guess, like just meandering its way through Colorado, and these people on the train saw a curious figure moving out in the wilderness, and this thing is bonkers. I'm gonna show you all this. If I can call my screen up, there we go. All right, so this is the actual camcorder footage, or cell phone footage, I guess I should say, of this thing that was captured. So you can kind of see him here. Later on in the video, they blow it up so you can actually get like a really good look at the so-called Sasquatch. But Vader, what was going through your head when you first saw this?
When I first saw it, I don't know. It's just like, oh, look, another fake Bigfoot video. But my mind doesn't want to think it's fake. My mind wants to believe. So I'm going to go with that line. And I'm going to say, hey, look, we finally got a not so fuzzy, maybe a Bigfoot video. That's not a dude in a ghillie suit. He doesn't have a rifle or a bow or anything with him. He had to just pop down there and try to blend in with the bushes when he saw the train looking at him. I don't know, man. It's just it's cool. It reminds me of that video from the 70s or late 60s or whenever that one was taken up in Northern California. The guy meandering through the woods looked like Culture Casino running around out there. And
I was gonna say, I don't think that's Sasquatch. I'm pretty sure that's Culture Casino Squatch.
Yeah. And Culture sitting
the
there.
Hair's too nice.
His Bigfoot background with his ape out in the middle of the background. But yeah, I love this.
Shiny.
I love this kind of stuff. So
the hair's way too shiny. I mean, if he was a real Bigfoot, it'd be nappy and gross.
You don't know
That's
that.
Culture Casino level hair right
Look
there.
at Culture doesn't comb his hair, and he's
He's
all
agreeing,
curly.
so he's not denying it.
Yeah. So
I mean, look at that. It's,
Maybe-
it's so
Seriously,
perfectly
though?
camouflaged.
Do you guys remember hearing about that guy in Germany or whatever it was? Like they did a story about him here just recently, where he's been living in the woods since he's a kid or some shit. They call him the Wolf Man or whatever.
yeah,
I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
I wonder if this is a similar thing, but seriously though, like the sheen of the hair really makes it feel like it's a polyester suit.
Well,
Yeah,
let me ask Brett this. So, like the conspiracy is that some dude put on a Bigfoot outfit and waited around for a train to come by so that he could be captured on cell phone footage, just to purvey the myth that Bigfoot is still out there. I mean, that alone seems a little bit far fetched to me. Like, what's your take on this?
Go like in the age
No, it
where
doesn't.
people will do anything to go viral. This is almost wholesome. Like if the idea here is like it's even better if he actually like it's his friend who's up in the train, who's up in the train car. You know what is it? It's like a gondola or whatever they're on there. Like it's better if that's what it is. And the first thing it made me think of is maybe they're filming one of those old Jack Links commercials with the, the beef jerky commercials. But I guess there would be a camera crew out there if that was them. That was what I thought of when I saw it. I did say like, is that a ghillie suit? The first thing I thought was like, is this some dude out there? But I think you're right. I don't think that really makes much sense. But in the age where people will do anything to go viral, I feel like Bigfoot is like as wholesome as you can do.
Right.
These days.
I'm with you. I just choose to I just like to have fun with this kind of stuff. And to me, it's Bigfoot until it's proven it's not. It's Bigfoot. So
it's also like, have you ever seen those ones where like a guy like he's got like his neighbors all have trail cams because of where he lives, and he'll put on his Bigfoot suit and walk in front of the trail cams and pause so that they can get a snapshot of it. Like I love that stuff. It's great.
I feel like that's a little bit more believable in terms of the hoax thing. Like this whole thing, it's like, well, what if, you know, like this seems so random where like he's just walking out.
Not really. You just said it yourself. There's a train going by, so you kind of know when the train's going to be coming by, and you just run out there.
I feel like if you're going to try to perpetuate a hoax, you do it in a way that was a little bit more guaranteed to like go viral.
But it's Bigfoot.
Maybe.
But I guess my question is that I want to find out how far out in the middle of nowhere this actually is, because trains go through some remote areas. But,
that's what I mean. Like
so I mean, is this guy going to drive all day and then hike up, super far away from his vehicle or whatever in his hot, wet?
My point is similar to the trail cam thing. You can kind of predict or kind of know where things are going to end up to where it's possible to plan it. If it's possible to plan it, I call bullshit.
I also think proportional wise, like if you look at this, like this is a big dude, whoever it is, So is Shaq. So that automatically eliminates Culture Casino as being the perpetrator of this.
Well, he might be wearing stilts.
Culture, what's your take on this Bigfoot sighting?
Staged at best. Hunting at worst. I mean, honestly, I know you guys are saying, well, it's not a ghillie suit. I'm like, all right. It's great that you guys want to believe this is real. It's funny as heck. And look, I mean, the guy turns around, looks at the camera, squats down. Look, he's just chilling. He sees.
Well, he's trying to use his superpowers to blend in with the background now that he
$5 says it's a cake.
I'm just.
Come on, that was pretty good. The alien joke. Come on.
I mean, look, you guys are trying to think. You're trying to say that maybe this is like, maybe this was his opportunity to drop a grumpy like Amber Heard. But
there you go.
I'm not on board with this. I would love for this myth to be perpetuated, but it's staged. Yeah.
We have come to a point where everybody has a video camera in their hands constantly. Yet we have not had conclusive UFO or Bigfoot proof.
We as a society have come to the stage, like Culture just said, to where if the freaking motherships from Independence Day were hovering above our cities, we would look up and go, "Oh, they're filming a movie. It's bullshit." and you guys are no fun, and I hate talking about this
CGI
kind
looks
of
like
stuff
shit.
with you. So
Well, also, like a lot of it is like now, whenever the government keeps saying aliens are real, and we're like, yeah, but what is it real? What are you distracting us from?
Now we're just
Government are real. Like that's BS. Also, for things like this, it kind of does remind you that everyone's got the phone in their pocket. That was what I first thought of when they announced like the reboot, like the continuation of the X-Files. I'm like, the show would have been over in the first episode. All he has to do is boom, phone, take the photo.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take much writing to be like they have shields on the ship that prevent your camera phone from being able to take a picture of it or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, or like a EMP bubble or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think it's ironic that the point was just made that, like, yeah, we've been going for years going, just admit it. We know aliens are real. Finally, they go, yeah, sure, aliens are real. You fucking liars.
liar.
This is a distraction, goddammit.
I still have a problem with the idea that you can camouflage something like that because, again, anything that's infrared that's how light's transmitted. So, the technology to displace and replace light is beyond us and probably beyond most alien civilizations. So, yeah. We're not talking about the ones that have crossed the border. Something different.
I know Bigfoot is real because the $6 Million Man fought him in 1978. Okay, so there.
That's true.
That's undeniable proof right there.
Right.
You can't fight something that's not real.
And most people mistake that for the Incredible Hulk. No, the Incredible Hulk fought a bear.
A bear.
Wasn't it Andre the Giant in that suit, or
Maybe,
or the guy that played Jaws? I think it was the guy.
I think it was the guy who played Jaws. Well, actually, the guy who played Jaws was originally cast as the Hulk.
Right on.
So says the dog.
And then wasn't
Mailman's
it
here.
Jean-Claude Van Damme in the Predator suit originally?
Yes, originally, yeah, and he hated it.
Very different Predator though.
Yeah, and then they ended up changing it on him.
All right, guys, real quick, just want to give a big shout out to Jillian once again, but to let y'all know that our goal for this live stream is to get 10 new members now. It's usually 5, but since Jillian already is there, we'd like to see 10 new memberships during the course of this live stream. That would be fantastic. So if anybody out there wants to gift subs or even just sign up regularly, we do a really good job of getting members content out there once a week. So you are getting something in exchange for your membership. And also give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. We're trying to get 200 5-star ratings in order to apply to become accredited movie reviewers on Rotten Tomatoes. So people can't ignore us and our terrible opinions on movies.
Wait, does that mean if you're on the credited Rotten Tomatoes one, that means you're part of like that second listing of movie reviews?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
We got to bring that down a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, Brett, you guys at Pop Culture Crisis are probably already eligible to submit for that.
Oh, I'm one like I'm really like when we do like the outros and the intros, like I always shout out like follow the Spotify, the iTunes, all this stuff, but I always forget to ask for reviews. Like I'd actually be scared to go and read some of those reviews right now. Maybe I'll do that later today.
Well, the beauty of it is they don't have to review you. They can just leave a 5-star rating and just leave it at that.
Leave the 5-star rating.
But that's for podcasts. So like I think YouTube rules are a bit different, but you might already meet those standards for the YouTube submissions. Anyway, guys, let's start talking about Marvel. And we're going to lead into the bigger issue that's going on with Marvel this week by talking about how Marvel hates the Inhumans. Do you guys remember the Inhumans, the old TV show that starred Anson Mount as Black Bolt and
the stand-in X-Men?
Brenda Swan.
Yeah. So this was an interesting article that came out on TV Line, and it was basically there's a new book coming out, and it's basically a book that goes into detail behind the scenes about Marvel's rise to power in Hollywood and all of its kind of like behind the scenes drama and failures and struggles and stuff like that. And I believe it's called The Reign of Marvel Studios MCU. So they actually have like a excerpt from the book in this article, which kind of details what happened here. And basically, long story short, around this time, Fox had control of the X-Men. And this was back when Ike Perlmutter still had kind of control over things before Kevin Feige pulled a Game of Thrones and ousted him. And basically, he made the decision where they were going to suspend all the comics that were supporting a rival studio's property. And so the plan at Marvel was to basically kind of sub in the Inhumans for the mutants in their expanded universe. And so they had originally planned to make this a movie, but then they kind of threw it into the TV realm and let Jeff Loeb kind of take it over. And it was just a shit show behind the scenes when it came to this thing. And they got to the point where basically it was so bad, they just were like, you know what, screw it. We're just going to push this under the rug and move on. But I don't know if you guys ever watched the Inhumans TV show, but it was bad.
I watched a few episodes. Andre forced me into it until I threatened him with the Geneva Convention.
Yeah,
I think I watched the pilot because they were doing the thing where they were like in IMAX. I'm like, does that really matter on my home television that's like this big? Yeah, this is not one of those things. It felt to me like one of their first big real missteps at that time.
And it was funny because they had such a terrible experience with this property that they have yet to go back and shoot in Hawaii because they don't want any connection to this TV show in the Marvel universe at all. So when they were making the Eternals, they actually did not allow the production to shoot anywhere in Hawaii because this show shot there, which I thought was kind of interesting. But Tom, you're usually up to date on like the behind the scenes going on. What did you think of this article?
I actually didn't get a chance to read it, but I'm not surprised. I mean, it was like their embarrassment at that time. I mean, like it was the de facto wannabe dime store knockoff X-Men, poorly conceived. The show was just boring and bad. The characters were interesting. If anything, I felt bad for Anson Mount for getting, stuck in a show that he could do nothing in. He was the most interesting character of them all, and he couldn't even speak. I mean, at this point, does anybody even remember it besides us? I mean, that's the thing.
Marvel has done its best to kind of sweep it under the rug. What were we going to say, Brett?
Oh, no, I feel like it's funny because Anson Mount was coming off Hell on Wheels at that time, which was really, really good. Serinda Swan, who was in a show called Graceland that I loved the first season of. She also did a show called Breakout Kings in like 2011. So like good actors, ridiculously cheap sets in that project. That's what I remember from it more than anything was like they could have done like if you have really really cheap sets like the whole where they're located, like it's almost like they didn't even bother to light it interestingly to kind of distract from the fact that everything looks like styrofoam. And
there was definitely like a budgetary issue here because they even talk about it in the book that they excerpt where like the dog Lockjaw, who was like a CG character, they had to injure him so they didn't have to CGI him into like different scenes and stuff like that. Like it was really interesting. Like they had to cut off Medusa's hair because the CGI for her hair was too expensive and all this other stuff. But what was interesting about this, Brett, was that this was basically they were trying to tie this into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the time. And it feels like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has also been kind of swept under the rug when it comes to the MCU stuff. Do you remember that show?
Oh yeah, that's what's funny about it is that might have the most diehard of the fan bases for a lot of that stuff. Is people loved Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It would they were like it's going to get canceled, and then they bring it back, and it kept going well beyond when I watched like the first 3 or 4 seasons. But at that time, like they were also very very distinct in having issues between them and also what was going on with Marvel, where they're kind of like back and forth. And is this tied to the MCU? Because that's what everybody wanted to know. Is it tied to the larger cinematic universe? Because that's where all the attention was at that time. And it was like they would half step and never be able to commit to any of these things actually being tied into the larger plot line, which made it feel almost like it was being discarded and of a second class nature by default.
Yeah, and what was crazy about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and culture, I don't know if you remember this or not, but the first season, so this was Marvel's first foray into TV. It was on ABC, and the big question was like, is this part of the greater Marvel universe? And the whole first season was a build-up to Captain America, Winter Soldier, where basically the big reveal was Hydra was still around and they had infiltrated, the government and all this other stuff. And it was meant to lead right into that. And then Sam Jackson makes an appearance as Nick Fury and all this stuff. And so there are pretty solid ties from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. universe to the main Marvel universe. But
yes and no. It was more like the movies could affect the show, but the show could never affect the movies.
True, but there were tie-ins to it to make the
Tie-ins
show
are not the
canon.
same. Yeah.
Oh, but it felt like they were saying, okay, the show's canon, and yet they disregarded like 90%.
It was the dumbest freaking show in the world. I don't know who these people are that enjoyed it. I tried to watch it. I tried to get into it. I felt like I was forced to watch it because I'm like, if I don't, I'm going to miss something that ties into one of the series. And when I found out the only thing that's ever going to really tie in was the whole aircraft thing, I was like, to hell with this. Like, I think I checked out sometime after that.
They did have some interesting stuff. Like at one point, the new head of S.H.I.E.L.D. was like a kind of like low rent Captain America superhero guy.
You're giving them too much credit for this crap, dude.
But culture, there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened there. But the TV end of things, especially under Jeff Loeb for Marvel, has always been kind of the redheaded stepchild. Like Marvel's never really given them much respect.
It was actually forced to be that way. Again, it's because of the power grab that Feige was making at the time. And you're right, the TV show, I enjoyed the first season especially because it was leading into a movie project. And I thought that the only hokey thing was bringing back a character that had been definitely eliminated, but it was the only way you could do the show. And it was the first foray for Disney proper to try to put their Marvel product on the screen on television. I think it was an experiment. Remind me what year that released. I don't remember what year that was, because all the way back to 2012, 2013 was when Iger was pushing really hard to get Disney Plus put together. He was at the same time also a member of the board on Apple, trying to help them launch their own streaming service.
It started the year after Avengers.
2017. It was 2017.
So he already had the cookie in the.
Are you talking about Inhumans or?
No, it'd be 2013.
Inhumans.
So
I say Shield started way back the year after Avengers,
2013.
man.
That's what I was aiming
That was why
for.
I hated this show. Is they made this promise that it was supposed to be like, oh, these guys are going to be like the cleanup crew after the superheroes come in. They got to come in and finish off all the cases and stuff, and it's like nothing ever tied into anything else. It was so dumb.
Well, at least it was better than all the Disney Plus shows that have come out, I think.
Yeah.
Indeed. Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
Well, that's a low bar, bro. I mean, it was a really
just saying, the first couple seasons I actually kind of liked. It wasn't bad. You don't like anything ever, Tom. That's what I like.
I was waiting for something to happen. Nothing ever happened.
Ghost Rider showed up. Okay.
When? I didn't see no Ghost Rider. I checked out way before that.
Right? Yeah, way before. I might be in the minority here for a lot of these things. Like I'm still a huge fan of like serial of just like network television type shows, right? Like I don't always need everything to tie into everything else. At that time, I would have been perfectly fine with the movies being their own thing and the television stuff being their own thing, because I can take those as different projects with different goals. Even the storytelling method is different, right? Like what I'm looking to get from a season of television isn't the same thing I'm looking to get from a movie. And one of the things is like DC was doing that at the time too, right? Like you had the CW shows, which hadn't quite turned to shit yet. Like I didn't have a problem looking at that stuff where they would like reference Batman, but Batman never shows up. Like as long as you don't do that constantly and constantly have to call back to what's going on in the films, I'm completely fine with things being separate universes, because when they try to meld different directing and art styles together, it tends to go bad anyways.
I think they were trying to be too dependent on characters and teams that nobody ever heard of. I mean, the Inhumans is a pretty small niche in the comic book world. I grew up reading comic books, never touched an Inhumans comic. You know what I mean? I had no interest in watching this show, and I didn't. And I was part of their target audience. Yeah. The normies out there were never going to watch this show. It had no chance from the get-go anyway. So, I know there's a lot of us that think that all this stuff is made for us, but it takes more than our small little nerd communities to support these shows.
I also think it's important to point out that when the Inhumans came out, it was kind of like in the build up to like Infinity War. And so like this was kind of like at the height of Marvel's popularity. And so they could take these obscure properties that they had, like, Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. And actually like there was enough interest where people would tune in. The only problem with Inhumans was that the show was bad. Like the writing was really shit. And so when people were watching it, they were just like, I don't want to keep watching this.
Well, when you were sticking to your faithful recreation of what actually exists in the books, it's pretty easy for someone like Gunn, who understands the books, to launch something like Guardians of the Galaxy and take something that would be relatively obscure to anybody who wasn't within our, fellowship of humans, and make it popular. But because it was something that everybody could engage with. Disney has done such a poor job with that now that, it's definitely, to blame for their drop in popularity and their lack of relevance in the marketplace, which leads us to, obviously more stories that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to the big story of the day, which is that Marvel is doing a major overhaul of its TV division, and this was a fascinating article for me. So the Hollywood Reporter broke this, and it was later reported on by Variety. By the way, everyone, links to everything that we reference in the show is in the description if you want to go and read these articles yourselves and stuff like that. But I was flabbergasted by the way Marvel's been running its TV division since it launched its TV initiative back in right during the pandemic and stuff like that. But this was so eye-opening to me, and it makes so much sense now why Marvel's TV properties have been so god awful for the most part. And basically, for those of you who haven't read the article yet, let me just break this down real quick before we get to our panel's opinion on this. So what Marvel did is they treated TV shows like big movies, essentially. They'd have a $150 million budget for a TV series. And instead of doing a pilot or hearing pitches from, different showrunners and stuff like that, they'd basically just say, okay, we're going to make a movie about these characters. And then they would hand it off to a internal Marvel producer, executive producer, like a studio guy. And then he would go in and he'd get writers to come in and write the season. And then they would hand that over to a director, and the director would then go and be the main creative voice for that season of TV. And then they would fix anything that didn't work in post-production. And that's not the way you do a TV show. Typically what happens is you bring in a showrunner, someone who is the head writer and who runs the writer's room. But then once the writer's room is done, they oversee the actual production of the show and make sure everything fits in its own unique vision. And they don't try to fix things in post. They try to fix things in the writer's room so that they have that through line. And so basically Marvel was we're bucking the traditional TV model. But as we've seen, their model of doing this stuff was just way too expensive. It's been turning people off because there's no coherent vision for these shows. And they actually have this really great infographic here where they show Loki, WandaVision, Falcon, Winter Soldier, and this is how many people are actually watching this stuff. And then Ms. Marvel.
I can't believe She-Hulk did that well.
I think most of that was hate watching, though.
I was gonna say
so
because
ridiculous.
The best show of those bunch is probably Hawkeye.
Yeah,
it's probably the least amount of the crap anyway.
But the crazy thing about in the She-Hulk instance, so they brought in that really stupid woman to run the writer's room, right, where she hired a bunch of people who didn't know how to write legal dramas. And then they finished the scripts for the show, and they handed it over to a director. And then the director went and took the show in a completely different direction. And so in the editor's room, they had to, in post-production, they had to bring back in the original girl who was doing the writers group, and she had to come in and oversee post-production. So it was this weird mismatch of things. But what really threw this story off is that they're rebooting Daredevil, right? Because you had the Netflix Daredevil series along with the Defenders and stuff like that. And they were doing Daredevil Born Again. And they had shot a little bit less than half the season before the writers and actors strike happened. And so during this hiatus, the Marvel execs actually sat down and watched the footage from what they had shot for Daredevil, and they realized that it was a mess. That it was so bad that they couldn't put it out there. And so they've made the decision to reboot the reboot of Daredevil and bring in a whole new writers team. They fired every writer who worked on it, right? So they're bringing in an actual showrunner, and he's gonna restaff the writers room, I guess, under the new WGA guidelines. And then they're going to retool the series from the ground up, because apparently Matt Murdock didn't do anything as Daredevil until the 4th episode of the reboot and stuff like that. And it was just, they were just like, what are you thinking? And it's also very unclear how it relates to the Netflix show still. And there's like a lot of questions up in the air. But Marvel has basically acknowledged that what they've been doing up to this point has not been working. And so they're actually trying to do a course correction here. And this seems to be like the equivalent of Zaslav shelving Batgirl, right? Where it's like, it was so bad, it's going to hurt the brand. We have to like just get rid of it and start from scratch. So Brett, what are your thoughts on this? Because this is a huge shakeup for Marvel.
It's funny to me because there was a time when being a showrunner was like the in thing, right? Think of like a J.J. Abrams or even a Joss Whedon before that. Like you had superstar showrunners who had names themselves, who knew what they were doing, but that was tied a lot of the time to the terrestrial television model, which was 24 episodes with commercials, and maybe they connect at the end, maybe they don't. But Marvel just, it's like first of all, I'm also upset because from the beginning, I was like, it's not going to be the same Daredevil. I don't care if it's the same actor. I don't care if they bring back Vincent D'Onofrio. I don't care. It will not, as we know it, it will not look anything like it looked like on Netflix, right? It will be a shell of its former self. And this is where you kind of run into this trouble where you've got 1,000 different voices, 1,000 different people at different levels of production, all of which are trying to like buck this model that's worked for decades and decades and decades. And it's almost like they wanted the problems, but I can't figure out why they would do this, if it's just hubris or if it really was. I mean, my assumption before was just like, is it just because Kevin Feige is the end all be all? Like they don't want to have showrunners because at the end of the day, Kevin Feige has the final say anyways?
I think that basically what they were looking to do here was they were looking to make these, as opposed to like actual TV series, they were looking at them as big movies that were just going to be cut into pieces. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of these things were like 30-minute long episodes.
I think it was kind of confirmed that that's how they were shot. In fact, one of the last shows they just had on, I think originally it was supposed to be more episodes than it was, and then they trimmed it down. Which one was that? Culture? Help me out here. I'm trying to remember.
Secret Wars, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was Secret Wars.
Invasion.
I think you're right. Or Secret Invasion.
Yeah,
I mean,
Invasion.
Yeah. And you're right, Matt. This is the biggest thing. Like going back to the Inhumans, they couldn't even afford to do Medusa's hair because of the CGI. They're spending way too much money on these other shows. They're spending movie money on these shows, and you hit the nail on the head. They've bypassed the whole idea of what it is to make a TV show compared to a movie. Because at this point, you have shot the entire thing. So if people don't like what's going on in it, She-Hulk's a great example. They can't course correct.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do to change it. And also this puts you in a position where, look at examples like a character like Steve Urkel. We wouldn't have him today if they had shot the entire first season of Family Matters and then moved on, right? Like nobody would have had enough time to react to that. He was just a one and done character until all of a sudden people started writing letters about him, and then he became the focal point of the show. It's kind of the same thing here. I mean, I'm not saying that they have a Steve Urkel. I'm just trying to use it as a comparison to where you can't course correct a show at all. Yeah.
So happy we have Steve Urkel in our society.
Yes.
That's just,
but it's just an example of how standard television used to work and how they used to be able to react on the fly. Yeah.
That's perfect because that's like we talked about how on it was specifically network television, right? Like you'd shoot your episodes, they're alternating directors. By mid-season, you can figure out which characters are resonating with their audience because they're coming out weekly. You're not dumping them all at the same time. Right. So you figure out which characters are starting to resonate with your audience. And then you as the writer and the director, and hopefully if you have a showrunner that actually cares about the property, says, look, this character is getting a large response from the audience. Let's start incorporating more scenes with that. They actually did that with Arrow, with Felicity Smoke, and then it just went too far and she became like the focal point of the entire show. But that is the benefit of the network television model, where they can actually kind of gauge what the audience response is to this stuff.
Yeah, the whole Felicity story arc was good for one season, and then it just became tiresome.
That's going too far.
I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but it's something they prevent themselves from being able to do in a situation like this, and especially when you're already $100-200 million in. Yeah. Like that should make 4 or 5 shows, not one.
That's insane.
Another really interesting example that they point out in the article is how Secret Invasion was treated, because originally it was going to be a whole different story, and it was being developed by one of the writers and producers of this really good TV show called Mr. Robot. And I guess he was taking too long, so they fired him and brought in this other guy who just kind of put together this weird amalgamation of what Secret Invasion was supposed to be. And then like the director who took over the project took it in an entirely different direction as well, because in the movie model, the director is kind of like the creative vision, but in the TV model, it's the executive producer who's the head writer. And so one of the big issues with Secret Invasion was that they were constantly like they had these warring visions of what the show was supposed to be, and it turned out to be, in my opinion, probably one of Marvel's worst TV shows, because it was just so all over the place. And with both She-Hulk and Secret Invasion, like they were literally trying to finish the special effects for some of these episodes like days before they were set to go live. Yeah. It was just crazy. Like Culture, you know, you're pretty kind of dialed into this stuff. What do you think of this huge course correction by Marvel?
It's a sign of desperation. I mean, it clearly we've watched viewership of all of their shows fall off a cliff, even their films. It's a greater Marvel problem at this point, and a lot of it feeds into the neo-Marxism that's kind of being pushed through Disney as a brand completely. You know, and to exit out of the political side of it, the quality of these programs, for as much money as they're spending on them. I mean, Tom already said, you know, you're looking at $250 million, you know, for 8 episodes of television, which is just ridiculous. They're in that position where they have to change something, because they're not making any money at all with Disney Plus. They're over $13 billion in the red on that overall. They cannot afford the kind of flop they're about to have with the Marvels, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And we're looking at a show that was, again, as you pointed out, going to have Matt Murdock not as Daredevil in his costume until after the 4th episode, which is dumb. And they had, I guess, 8 episodes, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they had 8 episodes in the can waiting for post. And they ditched this. That right?
The Daredevil?
Yeah.
I don't know how many. I think they're all I know is they had shot for 3 months.
Yeah.
And they're saying that they are going to use footage and stuff like that. But a source of mine said, oh, that's bullshit. That's just PR spin. This thing is being completely rewritten and reshot from the ground up. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, to support what Tom's saying, if they save any of this, it's just going to be background shots. It's not going to be anything shot with the actors in it, because they have to completely retool. But they're not just retooling this, and this is something that we've learned as well. They're retooling everything that was going to come out, including the next set of films. You're getting a retooled version on television of Wonder Man and Agatha, which is now in its 3rd reboot.
Oh, two more things nobody cares about. So yeah,
well,
I think they got Morbius with Agatha. They didn't get the meme, I don't think.
No,
is Echo still coming out?
Yes, you're getting that, but you're getting it in a different way. See, this is the cool thing here, Brett. We know how bad Echo is because they're dropping it as a binge. Yeah. It's not on a weekly basis. That's how bad it is.
Yeah,
because they want it to go away. And it's going to very quickly. It's like a fart in the wind. But I look, the Marvel thing is bad. It's going to continue to be bad until some of these reboots come to fruition. So we'll see. But the biggest problem is, and this is the last thing I'll say on this, because they've come to rely on fake analytics, fake metrics. They've been hoodwinked, as Tom was asserting, saying. They've been hoodwinked into creating products that nobody wants. I mean, you know, if you have people memeing Agatha, you know, they're getting this data from Parrot Analytics, which is trash-tastic at misleading the entertainment industry in what's popular, because they use this fake demand metric that I've covered multiple times, and actually Upper Echelon Games covered recently. In fact, the producer over there tried to reach me, and I was in Vegas at the time. But anyway, that he did a great job of breaking it down. The demand metric is misleading, because I can make a meme. They don't account for the fact that the meme is incredibly negative towards whatever they're producing.
Yeah.
Somebody can make mention of or use a hashtag that's associated with a product, and it's completely negative. their response, but that's counted as a demand metric. So it's incredibly misleading, and that's what they're falling into.
The Netflix kind of did it, succeeded because they did it with Dahmer memes and they did it with Wednesday memes, right? So it worked there because they spoke they spoke to the nature of the show, and they spoke to the positive response that was going on with the show. And then so that informs how they end up doing a second season. And it's not going to matter for a lot of this anyways, because what was it? Katie Sackhoff said that the catering budget and Star Wars properties is like more than what they're paying for, is more than what was all of Battlestar's entire season budget, right? So the budgets are enormous. There's no ad revenue coming in. You're all pulling from a communal pot of money that you don't really know who's going where anyways. And when the metrics are fake, you don't have any way of actually gauging where the interest is.
Yeah. And, that brings us to a larger issue that I want to get your opinion on, Matt Bader, which is that the biggest criticism post Endgame for Marvel has been that there's been no plan. And it feels like, the TV stuff is disconnected from the movie stuff, but even the movie stuff just seems to be all over the place. They don't know what lane to pick in. Is it going to be a multiverse war? Is it going to be a Kang the Conqueror thing? And it seems that I know that in Nerdrotic's latest video, he kind of criticizes Kevin Feige for skipping over generations worth of stories to go to kind of fast forward to the more woke-tastic MCU stuff, where basically they were like, okay, after Endgame, we want to focus on more female characters. It doesn't matter what our audience demographic is or what our audience wants. We're going to force them to watch stuff that they don't care about. And we've seen the result of that, which is the Eternals, which is Multiverse of Madness, which is, all these movies that are just bombing at the box office and bombing on Disney Plus in terms of TV series. So what do you think about this lack of plan from Marvel?
What you and your questions, I swear to God. What do I think about it? I think it's just more examples of poor planning on their part. I mean, you gotta have an outline, right? You gotta have a direction. You gotta know where you're going when you start. And they've never been good at this whole planning thing. I think it's just a Disney thing. Disney doesn't like to plan things. Star Wars doesn't have a plan. Marvel doesn't have a plan. They haven't had a plan since what, the end of phase 3. So if you don't know where you're going, it's kind of hard to figure out how to get there. I think is just the simplest way to put that. When it gets back to this Daredevil thing, why don't they just bring in the people who wrote and ran the Netflix show? That series was set inside the MCU. I mean, it picked up. It was all the little things were on the wall after the Battle of New York and everything. The Battle of New York's what set up the whole show, right? Continue that show. Let's bring those writers back in. If they're doing a complete and total redo of what they had. Yeah, man. I don't know how to answer your questions, Matt, because you ramble on for 30 minutes.
I do think there were some rights issues that had to do with the Netflix show versus like what Marvel was doing. But Brett, do you have any thoughts on this complete lack of plan from Marvel?
Yeah, the article mentioned no show Bibles.
Yeah.
no show Bible whatsoever. And to me, I think Marvel got this great rap that they were this well-connected, well-oiled machine before that, but that was just movies over a decade period of time. And to me, a lot of it was more Easter eggs than it was that it was actually all that well connected together. And then you try to expand that out to a television universe that's going to have even more cooks in the kitchen if you're not even adhering to a specific model of production that's tried and true. Right. So at the end of the day, the buck stops with Kevin Feige, but they can't figure out, he can't seem to figure out where he wants any of this stuff to go, because, and also to what he said about Daredevil, it's like, wasn't there also going to be a lot of conflict because he wouldn't want to be connected to the Jeff Loeb stuff or to Ike, to the stuff that Ike Perlmutter was kind of pushing at that time, because he felt that the movies should have taken precedence.
Another crazy thing that the article mentioned is that there were no dedicated Marvel TV executives. Like, it was all people who were overseeing the movies and stuff that were kind of also pulling double duty on the TV shows. And so, like, there was no one there to actually oversee all these different series and make sure that, you know, the people making them were talking to each other and keeping in tune with like all this other stuff. Like that just blew my mind. Tom, what are your thoughts on this lack of plan by Marvel, and also the complete like disorganization that apparently was happening over there?
Well, what's funny is we always thought for the longest time that they had a plan. And we've come to learn over the last few years, because, you know, we gave Star Wars and Lucasfilm so much crap for throwing the plan out the door. We learned from James Gunn that pretty much everything up through Guardians of the Galaxy was not necessarily quote unquote planned. I mean, you can kind of see it in the first few movies that they're really just kind of tacked on as far as like the connections. But he said he had to sit down and map out the entire Infinity Saga just so he could write Guardians of the Galaxy. So he took 90 minutes, and he's the one who mapped out from there where they were supposed to go to get to the end of Endgame. Basically.
I got a great idea. So you recruit like a dozen people, very diverse, multi-ethnic, whatever, just all across the spectrum. You get them in a house, you put a couple big whiteboards up in front of them, and you plan out and you map out the next 3 phases of the Marvel universe.
And rocks.
And you throw diversity on there and dinosaurs.
3 times.
Yeah, and you do all these things, and maybe, just maybe, they'll come out with something that looks like an outline of the future of the Marvel universe. I think it's a great idea.
But yeah, like, I mean, if you look at it, when was Marvel at its best between those two, between the era I just said, and that's the only time they went in with a plan. And you said it perfectly. Like, these shows should be ran, especially if they're going to do them all at once like this and not do it like a regular TV show. They should really be planned like an animated film, to where you go in knowing exactly what you're doing, so you don't spend any more money than you have to. Because when these shows cost, and that's what's insane about it, $150-200 million, that should be able to make 2, 3, 4 shows easy, right?
Here's the thing, though, and I think I'm not alone. I'm kind of over all of it. I'm going down new rabbit holes. This is what I'm doing now. I'm going to just like immerse myself in brand new things to me that I can enjoy and get into and talk about at a later time. But
I've moved.
I'm over all of this shit. I don't care about the Marvel universe anymore. I don't care about Star Wars anymore. They've ruined all of their goodwill. They've thrown it all away.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of funny. It is kind of funny that, like, because DC was so bad at just at not announce, they would just constantly announce things. You kind of got the idea. You thought Marvel was better prepared because they would make their announcements. They make the list. It's like, this movie comes out on this date and this movie comes out on this date. Every time they would do like some D23 or whatever, and they list you all the new Marvel movies that are coming out. And the info that was coming out of there, you might get people complaining about like crunch time CGI and things like that, but it felt organized. You're like, well, at the very least, they've got Kevin Feige taking care of everything and making sure that it's all on this like plan, and it's not. They just got lucky early on.
And speaking of the plans, culture, one of the interesting things about this article was that, so Kevin Feige is basically saying that instead of doing like kind of standalone limited series, which has been their strategy up to this point, they're actually going to do recurring series. Like Loki is the first season that is actually a follow-up to one of these limited series. And so they're like, hey, maybe it might be a good idea if instead of doing all these random series based around characters, we actually have like recurring series so that people don't have to feel like they have to watch everything in order to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that just seem like basic?
It does. And again, it's funny when you hear them talk about a return to the traditional model. And I'm like going, wait a minute, you weren't considering that before? And it just exposes us to the fact that a lot of people that they put in charge of these things had no background in regular television. So, Feige and many others coming forward saying, we're going to go after the traditional model. We're going to make a pilot. We're going to see if it works. If the show works, we're going to move on with it. We're going to develop them to go, season to season. We're actually going to invest some time in figuring out what a procedural looks like. So if we want to have a legal show, we're going to hire people who have a background in, legal stuff. I always do my best to not answer your question, Matt. I just want to say that going back to recurring, recurring regular seasons of things is probably the smartest move they could do. And it's something that they can intermingle with the television product, which they desperately have to do now. And we've talked about the fact that, or actually Brett mentioned it on this show, they need to find a way to commercialize this. So one of the things that they did originally was make the shows random lengths. I think you'll see less of that. I think you're going to see more consistency in the show length so that they're able to actually drop it on to ABC or one of these other networks that they keep around, so that they can monetize it, later on at a later date. Although the experience of the Miss Marvel television program is not something to tout about, because that was received rather poorly on network television. But I think that is 100% the direction they'll go, Matt. To answer your question, I think they have to, because they're going to have to figure out a way to monetize this garbage.
I was going to say, that's the thing that makes no sense to me about the Marvel shows, because you can clearly see it in every Netflix show, every Max show, whatever, outside of the Star Wars and the Marvel shows, which makes no sense. The rest are clearly structured to where, if they want to throw them up on network television at any time or syndicate them later on, they're able to do that. For some reason, the Star Wars and the Marvel shows, as we pointed out, are all shot at once like a movie and then chopped up. That makes it very difficult to put it on network television when one episode is 26 minutes, one episode's 35, one episode's 42 minutes, whatever. Sometimes I'm wondering, are these supposed to be half-hour episodes or hour episodes? Because you guys have such a randomness to the running time that I don't think anybody really knows at this point. Like, I know that most of them are supposed to be basically the typical hour-long running shows, which means they should be between 42 and 46 minutes in length. Otherwise, you've completely screwed the networks out of commercials, or you're going to have to cut them down or pad them in some way to make them fit in the television spot. Right. I just don't get it.
But Tom, I think the larger problem there is that when you see a Disney Plus series, you have the first episode, which is okay usually and has a little bit of a hook. And then you have 5 episodes of filler. And then you have 2 episodes at the end that actually matter.
Right. But that's not even my point, though.
No. I'm just saying, I'm adding to what you're saying. I'm saying they're going to have to end the filler stuff. Right, they can only have like 1 or 2 filler episodes out of like.
That's because we've kind of cracked the formula on what these shows are. You literally have maybe enough story for one movie, and then like, okay, now pad it out with a bunch of crap so we can make it 6-7 hours long and cut it up into 6 or 8 episodes.
Yeah, what's interesting is like there's a formula for this, right? So like if let's just take the Netflix shows, for example. Those were specifically geared towards street level heroes like that. That's like a category within the Marvel universe, right? You have the cosmic heroes, you have the Avengers, you have the mystical heroes, and then you have street level, right? Which is the more day-to-day crime fighting, like thugs and mafia and stuff like that. And traditional TV would be like, okay, we're going to make a series called The Defenders, and we're going to have A, B, C, and D plots with Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. And basically you'll have these 4 characters in this series, and that way you can eliminate a lot of like the really stupid subplots that these shows were forced to include just for runtime sakes, and just really focus on these heroes doing their own thing and slowly come together on that street level. And I feel like that's kind of like what they're waking up to that they need to start doing. But the question is like, are they actually going to succeed in doing it? Because they can pivot all they want, but if they still keep creating shows about characters and storylines that people don't care about, people are still not going to, they're going to pull a Matt Vader. He's just checked out of it. Right. And like, is it too late for them to be doing this? Do you think, Tom?
Yes.
What about you, Brett?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, way too late. It's funny because there was problems like this before. One of the things that I loved about Netflix, the Netflix series, and I know a lot of people hated this, is that they felt like they had too much filler, right? There are 13 episodes, there are 12 episodes, and everyone felt they needed to be cut down to 10. And then they made the Defenders 8. So you doubled the characters and then cut the episodes down to less. I would have been completely fine with capping it at 10 or 11 and doing that for all of them, but I didn't think that they needed to be 8. But I mean, there was such a thing in network television called a bottle episode. They don't have the money to go to a bunch of locations, but they still have to get an episode out that week. So they spend less money on it. They have to use the sets they've already got, things like that. But I think they may have underestimated just how much it might have mattered to people without them even realizing it. The comfort of like every episode being the same length or similar lengths. Like when I would go into this stuff, and I would like when I went and watched the Continental, I'm like, this is an hour and a half long. And that like, but when I go to watch the Marvel shows, it's like, yes, one is 56 minutes, one is an hour and is an hour and 12 minutes, one is 42 minutes, and there's no consistency there, but it's designed for you to binge through, which they then cannot monetize later.
Well, and the comfort aside, like it's all about network standards, right? Like shows like One Piece, as far as I know, all the Netflix Marvel shows prior to when they switched over to Disney Plus, they all were structured in a way to where they could be moved over to television or syndicated. That was my point, right? Yeah. Like, especially look at One Piece. It is definitely set up to where, and I guarantee you they're going to at some point put this thing on network television. It is set up specifically for that. And most of their shows generally are that way because they know that's how they can maximize their value.
And they also know this, Tom, and you'll agree, and I think everybody on this panel will, that's the reason why every one of these streaming services are diving into an ad tier, because they have to monetize. Yep.
They need a place for ads. Exactly.
And again, I'm just not surprised. Tom and I, and probably many people on this panel, predicted this was going to happen because there is no profit in streaming.
Well, and the Continental is a bit of a different animal, but it's basically the same structure as the old television miniseries.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And what those was 2 or 3 nights of 2-hour presentations, which would be 90 minutes with a half hour of commercials. But you're right, like the bottle episodes used to be a thing mainly because they used to have to fill 22 to 24 episodes a season. But when you only got 10, 12, 8 episodes, you should not have any filler. Okay, this is a very important, expensive real estate. You need to use every bit of it to make make it count. You can't be just throwing in bottle episodes when you only have 6 episodes. That should not be. Look at Cobra Kai as a great example. 5 episodes, 10 episodes, 5 hours worth of content. Boom, boom, boom. Everything's happening. They don't waste any time with any of it.
I want to take a show like Ahsoka, right? And I want to take all the stuff where Ahsoka is on screen talking, and then speed it up to where she sounds like a normal person, and see how much time that they
see. You guys were explaining that like that's an editing flaw, if you ask me. Like you sit here and you go line beat line beat line. It's like that's not how editing works. It should be line beat. Maybe if it's a dramatic line, maybe 2 beats at the most. Like
the issue with Ahsoka was that Dave Filoni was emulating George Lucas's style of directing actors. And that's exactly
bullshit.
How George Lucas
This was faster, more intense. Those are the only 2 words he knew.
Okay.
All right, guys, real quick, we got some super chats I want to get to. We got Wrecked Films Montana for $5. So are we all black-pilled enough to not have hopes that this reboot, course correction, will actually result in something as good as the Netflix series? Yeah, I'm not buying it until I see it.
No.
But,
absolutely not.
Yeah. Brett's down there going,
I don't even we have to go, like we bought like our tickets for the Marvels, and I'm like, do we actually have to do this? Like, no. And it's an hour and 45 minutes. I still don't want to go. Like, I just don't have any. I don't have any interest in the DC stuff. Like, they've both kind of just broken me in a lot lot of ways. Brett, I can't bring myself to care.
You're doing it wrong. You have to buy tickets for a different movie and then go and watch the Marvel. Because,
it's hard to do that with assigned seating anymore.
Well, yeah. We have like where you go, like you.
Well, when no one's in the theater, it doesn't matter though.
That was another thing you mentioned earlier when you were talking about how like before Avengers: Infinity War, they could just throw whatever they needed to at the wall and it would stick. Even if Inhumans didn't, they did throw Captain Marvel at the wall right before Endgame, and it made $1 billion. And yeah, they don't have that luxury anymore. We're now going to watch Aquaman and Captain Marvel fight for who's going to be the $1 billion movie that makes the least when they come out.
All right, guys. Want to give a shout out to Joran Failth, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He just became a member of the channel. Thank you so much, Joran. Really appreciate that.
Bullshit. You're not saying that well enough.
Joran Fourth.
There you go. Thank you, Tom. And Penny member chat, why is Brian not here? So Brian unfortunately has pneumonia.
He's getting a sex change.
Well, he's gender fluid, so he doesn't need one of those.
But his fluids changed.
Yeah. Yeah, so like he's been sick for like the past 2 weeks, and apparently it's been getting worse. And so like he went to the doctors, and he's just bedridden. He can barely talk. So yeah, that's what happened with Brian. Hopefully he'll be back next week. We'll just
we wish him the best, especially if he's listening.
Exactly. And then we have Mo Lester for okay, you got me on that one, for $6.99 Canadian.
I love it.
Just wanted to say T Swizzle booting Exorcist out of a Friday the 13th in October release is probably my favorite thing.
Oh wow.
They got bad blood, yo.
Oh, think about that investment, the amount of money that they spent on to get the rights to The Exorcist, all to have it fail that spectacularly.
Am I the only one who saw it, or
I didn't see it.
Oh,
I refused to, like, after I heard the line that they kept me out of my daughter's exorcism because of the patriarchy. I was like, I'm not giving this movie my money.
You know what's sad is that Andre didn't hate it. He actually liked it. I was in the middle on it. It's really that line and the ending are the problem. Other than that, it's not horrible.
It's going to be on streaming on Max or something
October
next weekend,
24th. Right? Yeah. Well, no. Well, it was originally going to be dropping day and date on Peacock, but I had got leaked the info that it should be out on streaming already by the 24th on video on demand.
Is that like the quickest turnaround from theater to streaming ever?
No, actually, we've been getting a lot of them late. I couldn't believe it. The Equalizer only made it 3 weeks and they dumped it on video on demand. There was another one. The Expendables is already on video on demand.
I liked the Equalizer 3. I hated the Expendables 4. The Expendables 4 was awful.
I am going to tell you right now, this year best cinematography in a film is Equalizer 3.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
It's funny too, like because of COVID rules, how many movies shot in Italy in the last couple of years? Like what was it?
I didn't even realize that was the reason, but I mean, it works into the story. But yeah, okay, I didn't know that.
Well, like that Mission Impossible film there. Fast and Furious went there. Yeah, like a bunch of movies went there because they were able to, like, we were still harsh on, because California, you know, they did their exemptions for the studios, but it was easier to go out and film overseas there. So
all right, guys, so we talked a little bit about Marvel. Let's start talking about the chaos at DC Studios. This is quite an interesting story that came out in Variety. And basically what happened was the therapist notes from the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial got released to the public. And essentially what happened was all the Amber Heard fans and stans and detractors went through this thing and found a lot of information about her basically bad-mouthing her experience on Aquaman 2. And in these notes, she basically lambasts Jason Momoa for being drunk, dressing like Johnny Depp in order to intimidate her, and James Wan being a unsupportive director. And then once this comes out, basically Jason Momoa, like everyone who's involved in the production, is like, he's the most professional guy you can imagine. Yes, he'll have a beer, but he's never shown up drunk on set. He dresses like that because it's a style, not because he's emulating Johnny Depp. Like she specifically said, he had rings on all of his fingers, you know, just like Johnny does. And it was really kind of like a fascinating like look at like Amber Heard's like psychology and how she views other people, particularly when it comes to basically James Wan and Jason Momoa petitioned Warner's to replace Amber Heard or get rid of her after the first movie, because they were like, in very PC language, that they were like, oh, there's just not enough chemistry between her and Jason Momoa. But the reality of it is like neither of these people can stand to work with her. And so they wanted to replace her, and DC was Warner Brothers was going to do this until Elon Musk, who's obviously had his trysts with Amber Heard and various other actresses that she's brought into the fold, basically sent a scorched earth letter from his litigators to DC, threatening them with all types of crazy lawsuit stuff if they replaced her. And so they decided to keep her on, but then the Johnny Depp trial came out and she just got destroyed publicly. And so like they've cut back on a lot of her stuff. But this is just a small part of what's going on over in DC. And again, you can find a link to this article in the description. The big thing is that the plans for DC going forward, James Gunn doesn't have the type of power that Kevin Feige does. There's still kind of like, studio executives he has to answer to and all this other stuff. And they're talking about how like there's no clear plan for what exactly is going to happen with the current DC roster. They have confirmed that pretty much all the Snyder people, Gal Gadot, Ben Affleck, Jason Momoa, and what's his name, the Flash guy, Ezra Miller, like all these guys are not going to be reprising their roles going forward. However, Jason Momoa may be coming back as Lobo, and there's like all this like weird stuff like running out there about like how Amanda Waller is going to continue on. So is the Peacemaker. So like some things are the same from the Snyderverse, but other things aren't. And all the DC properties this year have just been like huge box office failures. And it looks like the Aquaman movie, which has consistently tested in the 60s and continually is getting like reshoots and re-edits and all this other stuff. Apparently it's just a mess, and they know it's a lame duck movie because they've already announced that going forward they're going to be changing things up with like the whole Superman rebirth and like all this other stuff. And so audiences have already checked out of most of these DC properties because they know there's no future in them. So it's just fascinating to me, and this is coming kind of off the tail of other stories, which has gone into like how like DC didn't have a plan, like they followed Zack Snyder's advice to do like like the big team up movie and then branch out into individual stories, and that was a mess and all this other stuff. So I find it interesting that not only is Marvel in a state of chaos, but DC is arguably in an even bigger state of chaos right now. So Culture Casino, what's your take on all
Before
this?
he does that, can I do this?
I fucking knew it.
Well, we've all been saying this stuff for quite some time.
No, you guys never give me fucking credit for my scoops. Never mind, I'm leaving.
Tom,
I try to get.
You are the head scooper of all scoopers.
He's got great ice cream. He scoops wicked chocolate.
Well, at least Culture was there for the reports. He knows.
I do know. We Tom and I have been talking about this for a while. I'm like, gosh, everything Tom said was like happening is happening, but it's true. And my thoughts on this is I'm not surprised. DC's been a hot mess from the beginning. They've always been the stepbrother, the little kid to whatever Marvel's been doing since they've entered the idea of these cinematic universes. What's funny is the two most popular characters in comics are Spider-Man and Batman, and they've never fully taken advantage of Batman. Superman, the Trinity, they never fully took advantage of that in DC. They never really did anything with it. But the fact that this is a hot mess, it's been a hot mess since forever. They tried to play the shortest possible game to catch up with Marvel by doing immediate team ups and not fleshing out the characters that they wanted to reboot in their universe. And outside of the successful run of Nolan's Batman and then the original Batman 89, I'm not sure that there's been the kind of love for Batman that there needs to be. And the recent Matt Reeves version of the Batman was not necessarily a stellar success based on how much the film cost. So because I forgot your question entirely, Matt, I'm going to say that I'm just not surprised about DC.
I forget his questions the moment it comes out of his mouth.
Well, Tom interrupted me. I couldn't remember.
He asked if they're in worse shape than Marvel.
Yes, but they started out that way. Thank you, Tom. But they started out that way. They never had a firm footing. They never had a firm plan. Even less so than Marvel, which we just described as non-existent until Gunn entered the fray, right? So because they never took the time to build anything up, nothing was ever going to stick. And then because they've stepped away from something that's established in whatever crappy way it was, because Zack Snyder is much the inferior creator than most people will try to portray him as. That's where we are, and I don't care how much Mexican Iron Man is a Snyder fan. I'm going to say this: Zack Snyder is a terrible guide for anything that isn't his own product.
Man, I hope Rebel Moon is awesome. I just cannot wait. I hope it's just awesome.
You mean Battle Beyond the Stars, the remake?
No, I mean Rebel Moon, man. Quit saying it.
Discount Star Wars.
Real quick, Tom, you sent this picture in our private chat.
Yeah.
Is this an actual, like, not doctored picture of Momoa?
Yeah.
They were like, people were like, he's not dressing like Johnny Depp. He's just bohemian. He dresses bohemian.
He's just being himself.
He's dressed like that for years.
Yeah.
Literally.
Not new.
To be fair, though, he did unfollow her on what was it, Instatick?
Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah,
Instabook, Facegram,
that
thing.
thing.
But you know, Brett, Warner's has a lot riding on Aquaman 2. They've spent probably close to $300 to $400 million with like reshoots and stuff like that. And it's kind of funny. At the end of this article, they basically say like, well, because there's no competition in December, we think it might do okay, you know, at the box office.
I still laugh that they released like a water-based movie in the winter.
Well, originally it was supposed to be in the summer, but
Yeah.
they pushed it back for various reasons. But what's your take on this? Do you think Aquaman 2 has a chance, and why do you think Warner Brothers has such a hard time monetizing its DC properties?
For me, the number one thing is they don't know when to shut the hell up. Like we said earlier, all of Marvel's problems were there before, but because it wasn't heavily publicized with constant changes. Do you remember when originally, like, okay, so the Justice League is about to come out. They've released Batman vs Superman, and they're like, Ben Affleck is going to direct his own Batman movie. He's going to do a trilogy. He's going to act and direct in a trilogy. It's going to be Escape from Arkham. All this stuff that changes, and at every level, every time something happens, they publicize it. We're going to make this movie. We're going to make this movie. We're going to do this, and none of it ever comes to fruition. So you're exhausted before any of this stuff even has a chance to come out. And every time one of these movies comes out this year, it's a bigger and bigger flop. And yes, I would say that what Culture said about Zack Snyder's accurate for the most part. I didn't have a problem with most of those movies because at that time I was so fed up with the LOL so random humor of Marvel that anything that took itself seriously, I was like, okay, I'm at least on board a little bit for something that isn't trying to make me laugh after a bunch of civilians get maimed every 10 minutes. Like I was okay with that. I had no problem with the director's cut of Batman versus Superman or anything like that, but they don't have a head of studio like the way Marvel has a Kevin Feige. And if Kevin Feige is even having problems keeping things organized when he seems to have a much tighter grip around the properties that he's in control of, do I buy that James Gunn is going to be able to direct this world into some semblance of coherency? Not really. I like James Gunn as a director. I enjoyed the Suicide Squad. I enjoy Guardians of the first two Guardians of the Galaxy. I didn't even go see 3. And like as a director, he's good. Am I going to believe that he fell into the same trap right away? He's making announcements every 5 days. Every couple of days, it's we're doing this. We're doing this. We're doing this. I'm like, make an announcement, make a roster of everything you're going to do, then shut up until the stuff starts advertising. Because you're going to start, these projects are going to start dropping off. Things are going to get delayed and people are just going to fall off. Like a lot of us are feeling right now with Marvel, you're just exhausted by it all. It's almost like there's just too much news, too much information, and none of it feels coherent. None of it feels organized. Why would anyone be excited about something like that?
I don't know. Tom Connors, scoop master extraordinaire that you are, what have you been hearing about the behind the scenes stuff?
Okay, well, the thing is with this article, even though you said confirm, it doesn't necessarily confirm because a lot of these folks that are giving this info are people they are anonymous sources. In fact, one of the very people they talked to could have been one or two of my sources. I don't know, because some of the things that are in here are the exact things that I was hearing. In fact, the thing that I keyed in most on was because I kept hearing, they were thinking about replacing Amber in the movie. And this was, of course, after the fact, but I didn't know about the Elon Musk thing. That was kind of the only thing that came out in this article that was new news. The rest of it was like, oh yeah, we've all heard this before. And the thing that really stuck out to me is what I kept saying was, because I'd ask my sources, I'd be like, well, what's going on with Amber and Aquaman 2? Because it keeps getting delayed. They keep going into reshoots. Is Emilia Clarke going to be in the movie? And she even confirmed that they had discussed it with her, but she said that she just couldn't because of her health and schedule. So they clearly were thinking about it. But when James Gunn came in, I'm assuming the same thing happened there that happened on The Flash, and they decided they just weren't going to spend any more money. But at the end of the day, they kept saying to me the same thing that was said in this article, and that is Amber's not the problem. The problem is the movie sucks. It was testing in the low 60s. They did reshoots. It's still tested in the low 60s. They did more reshoots. I heard it even came out worse and more convoluted and confusing. They put the director in this hospital with exhaustion because he's been dealing with this movie for almost 3 years now, right? And every time there's a regime change, as Brett was pointing out, there has been multiple regime changes. Remember, originally it was Zack Snyder running this thing. Then for a hot second, it was Ben Affleck. Then it was Jeff Johns and Berg. Then it was Hamada and What's-Her-Face. And then Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi were kind of trying to keep things together until they found somebody to run DC. And then Gunn come in. And at that point, everything made sense when he basically said he was going to do a ground-up reboot. But now all of a sudden, why are you keeping your Peacemaker universe other than to keep your wife employed? Recast her in another role. What the hell are you doing? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And this is the latest I've been hearing from people. And that is nobody understands why he's doing this other than nepotism. Yeah. Other than it's his thing and he doesn't want to let it go. And I've said this a million times, he could do both Waller and Peacemaker season 2, get them out of the way, then do Superman Legacy a couple years down the road, because we already know it's going to get pushed off.
But Tom,
between the strikes and everything.
But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that speaks more about the fact that they are going to separate themselves from DC. They are going to try to sell that to somebody. And one of the ways they can do that is to keep the Peacemaker project and Gunn and his creative mind and guidance intact so they can part with DC, right? That's Warner Brothers' ultimate goal here.
I thought they wanted to sell. I thought the idea was they want to sell Warner Brothers Discovery to Universal or something.
This is a big. Okay, this was a rumor I think that was started by some financial analyst,
which was
and people in the company are picking it up because this wouldn't. I don't think that that could legally happen, and I don't see Warner Brothers piecing off DC and selling it to anybody because I could see Universal being interested in DC. Yeah, that I could see them being interested. The rest, no. I don't think they'd want the rest at all. Why would they want DC? So they can compete with Disney and they can put it all in their parks and everything like that. But unless they made a sweetheart fucking deal with Warner Brothers to make this happen, I don't see it because the regulations would never let Universal Comcast buy Warner Brothers.
But they could buy DC. And let me add to that real quick. And I will entertain anybody like the suggestion that I'm wrong because it certainly could be. But don't you believe that Comcast Universal is about to come into an extra $10 billion here in the next, couple of weeks?
They're going to need a lot more than that.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, if $10 billion can buy you a third of a streaming service.
The thing was that DC is not the kind of property that Marvel was when they were first bought out by Disney. Like they were just ramping up their movies. You've got Superman and Batman who are well established.
I'm just saying they have a lot. They're going to have a lot of disposable cash.
You need maybe $15 billion.
What was the sale for Warner Brothers to Discovery? What was the sale price on that? Does anybody know?
I think that was mostly a stock buy-in.
It was like 2 or something, right?
Well, it was done as something called a reverse Morris trust.
Okay.
And so a lot of it was largely a stock exchange, and
because AT&T still technically owns them, right?
They have a decent percentage of the company,
or a percentage in the company.
Yeah. So I don't remember the exact figure. I could definitely look it up, but you're not wrong. There was quite a bit of cash exchange, but it was mostly stock interest in it, and it was kind of what at the time I thought would have been undervalued, but it did retire, if I'm not mistaken, about $40 billion in debt because of how they spun it out, because of the tax savings, because of what Zaslav's moves were after the fact to basically get rid of garbage like Batgirl or whatever that was. And then look, Zaslav's made great moves left and right, trying to cull the garbage out of his company, which included getting rid of any interest in the CW, right? He pawned that off on the
Next
TV.
Star.
Yeah, exactly. The TV owner. But I thought that was very, like I said, I just think Zaslav has been very astute, and he's actually ahead of the curve on stuff, and Iger's very far behind and is now playing catch up because he's being forced to. So.
I do think that to your point earlier, especially about to Tom's point earlier about Harcourt and everything that Gunn is doing, I really do believe you have to get rid of all of them. You may want to hang on to 1 or 2 characters, but it's going to be too confusing. You just have to. It really is just a point of almost rebirth for the company. Yeah. If you keep Waller, Even if you keep Waller, you're like, okay, why is she there with this new Batman? It doesn't make any sense. Well, it doesn't work. And we've been saying that for years. I didn't think that was a very strange thing to say, but all of these actors, I know Gal Gadot keeps coming out and saying like, yes, I might stay on. And then they're like, no, she's not going to stay on. But it makes no sense. Like, you have to start over. And that was the problem with the connected universe before, right? Like, people liked it because now they can do the multiverse. Well, that's a cop-out. It's a cop-out to bring them back. Yeah, maybe 10 years down the line, when you've reestablished yourself with new characters, maybe this David Cornsweet can establish himself as a good Superman. I have no idea. But you can't bring these characters back until you've established a new world with new actors, new directors, and an actual production line that works.
Hey, Matt Vader, what do you think about Elon stepping in and threatening a movie studio because his side piece, thruple proponent, is going to get fired from her sweetheart gig?
I mean, what? I don't know, dude. I don't know what I think about it. I think, if you got $40 billion in the bank, you think you can probably do whatever you want, right? It's like, hey, now you guys, I'm Elon Musk. I have a lot of money. Do what I say.
See, I figured he just he was still waiting to do because he did the Mercy cosplay. Maybe he wanted to do Mara cosplay and he wanted the actual suit from the movie, and they hadn't done it yet. He's like, you can't fire her yet. Okay, I will buy the studio if I have to.
I have her pegged as the mother of my 47th, 48th, and 49th child,
and she's gonna peg me. No, that's the thing, is it needs to be made clear that the whole Elon thing happened between films, right? Like, they were going to shit can her before. Keep this in mind, guys. Before all this other stuff. They were just going to get rid of her because they didn't like her in the movie. Even though the movie was successful, they felt that she didn't have any chemistry. So Elon shot that letter off. Then all this other stuff happened, right? So at that point, that's what I'm saying. Like, when he shot that letter off, they didn't have a good reason to fire her. That's probably why they're like, fuck. If they come after us with a hardcore lawyer, we're done for. After the trial started and all that bullshit come out, that's when I started hearing about, well, they're talking to Emilia Clarke and a few other actresses. They're thinking about recasting. But that point's when they were still going to continue with this timeline, or at least these characters. And that's what DeLuca and Abdi thought the best course of action at that point was to kind of do a reset with the Flash and then just use all these same actors still, but do, new versions of them, basically, in so many words. But then when Gunn came in, that all changed. So that's where, the confusion has set in. You guys are 100%. This whole thing is just a mess. They need to just reboot from the ground up. And I'm going to put this out there just for any Snyder fans who are listening. And look, if Universal just happens to write them a huge check and they do sell DC to Universal, don't get your hopes up on anything Snyderverse, guys. It's not going to happen. If Universal takes this on, they are going to completely restart from the start. Like, they're going to do their own thing in their own image. Like, I know that, look, this is the one thing I guess I can add to this that's not in this article, but partially in this article. This is what I was told by those guys when I kept asking, why did they do this now instead of waiting until after Aquaman was in theaters to announce the reboot? And they said flat out that the main reason was they were trying to quiet down the Snyder Bros. And I said, all you did was fire them up even more. And they're like, yeah, we know. We don't understand it either. Like, nobody seems to understand why James is doing this shit, right? It's like, as soon as he got the job, he turned into completely like this. He's online all the time, doing this rumor shit, adding to the fucking fire, calling out people, putting rumors out there, yet he's still adding, he's causing a lot of the confusion. And there you go. So, like, that's where they're at right now. It's a big, confusing mess.
Yeah, James Gunn is a creative. He's not a studio guy, so it kind of makes sense that he's making these missteps. But also, Amber Turd is the gift that keeps on giving, it seems like.
She is indeed.
And speaking of which, we have a super chat from Jorn Falth. Left a turd on Mr. Kadish's pillow. Indeed. I like my pillows dirty.
And a smeary one.
Ew.
Mexican Iron Man for $9.99. Listening in from Atlanta Airport.
Mikey.
Shout out to the panel and my due respect to Mr. Kadish. Thank you.
He means that because you're putting up with me.
Also, Tommy Reviews for $2. Fun fact, Heard was in John Carpenter's last movie. Yes,
Fun fact,
right.
John Carpenter barely was there to direct it. I don't know.
And hardly anyone saw it as well.
I was gonna say, I think he kind of retired and just showed up just to, yeah, you can put my name on it.
And you're in Falth for 50. I don't know what that is. Sex. How you guys feel about Bill Gates owning Blizzard and World of Warcraft? Yes, the Microsoft acquisition of Activision and Blizzard went through. So Microsoft now owns the second biggest gaming corporation in the planet.
Yeah,
it can't be any worse than what Activision did with it, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, it's true.
I mean,
I don't know. I hate these things because it's going to reduce competition for AAA or 5A titles, whatever you want to call the best about possible games. Just like what happened when Rockstar decided to acquiesce to a larger entity. But look, if anything, this deal should be unraveled. I don't think it will be. I'm dropping a story on this on That Park Place on probably Monday, but I have no positive feelings about this. I think that it is a monopoly at this point, or it's well within the monopolistic practices. It will discourage competition. It will discourage innovation. Everything that's required to call it, bad is there. And so the fact that the judge kind of moved forward, past this while the government here is appealing it, and the fact that the quote unquote watchdog in the EU gave it its blessing, which is how this thing actually moved forward. I think to me, it smells very much of corruption, but that's just me.
Is this going to affect your World of Warcraft subscription, Vader?
It's going to run out in a few more weeks. I haven't had any time to play. I thought I was going to try to get things going again, but I can't dedicate the time to properly play World of Warcraft the way I want to. So, but if you go on Steam, there's a whole lot of little independent game creators out there that you can get games from fairly cheap too, like $5, $10. You get them on sale for $1.50 sometimes. A lot of fun little things out there. Go out and explore, see what's out there, see what's new. There's a lot of really creative people out there. You don't have to spend your money on these big AAA companies if you don't want to. Go find some cool stuff.
Consolidation seems to be the name of the game in most of entertainment today.
Yeah,
unfortunately, that's it's not encouraging to me. With all of these entertainment companies, not just games, but within movies and television, as these things consolidate down to smaller and smaller entities, you're going to have less to choose from, and everything's going to start to feel even more of the same than it already does.
Yeah.
I will say, though, I think Microsoft in general has done a better job of shepherding its games forward than Activision did when they were kind of in charge, and because they ruined Blizzard. You see stuff like Sea of Thieves and stuff like that, which basically comes out and Microsoft gives it support and the games get better over time and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops. But speaking of developing, did you guys hear about Jada and Will? So this is kind of interesting. So basically, Jada Pinkett-Smith came out and publicly said that basically her marriage to Will has been over for the past 7 years. They've been technically separated, but they refused to get a divorce for their family. But honestly, it's just because her career is so dependent on Will Smith, in my opinion. So all this stuff is coming out about how their marriage has been a sham. They've just been doing this stuff for publicity reasons. She's surprised when he keeps referring to her as his wife. She was completely blindsided by his reaction during the Oscars where he bitch slapped Chris Rock. But it's kind of funny because more and more people are coming out against her in this kind of thing where basically they're she ruined Will Smith. She's the most evil, conniving bitch of a fake wife possible. And it's kind of interesting because if you look, I think her last major acting role was in the TV show Gotham.
Yeah, Fish Mooney.
Where she came in for a couple seasons. And she got praised up the wazoo for that performance. I didn't think she was all that good. I've never thought she was a good actress. I never thought she was very attractive. And she's just the more that you learn about her personally, the more you just learn that she's a very terrible person. It seems Chris Rock has this great bit about how she interviewed Will Smith for her own now defunct podcast, where she talked about cheating on him and how he felt about her cheating on him in that same podcast. And it's just like, dude, come on. Like this is next level stuff. Brett, I know you guys like to dig into this stuff on your show. What's your take on it?
Oh, it's if you watch the interview that she just did the other day where she talks about, where she basically admits this is going on, she looks like a supervillain. She's like, yes, this did happen. She's one of the least likable people in the entire world. And the reason people liked her in Gotham is because it's not a stretch to imagine that she would behave that way, because she's kind of villainesque anyways. And my co-host on that show, she's 23. She's very young. She doesn't understand how cool Will Smith was.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the 90s. She can't actually understand that Will Smith was at one time the height of cool. To her, Will Smith is nothing but a dude who's been broken down by this evil-looking, evil-seeming woman. And that's maybe the biggest loss, right? Is he was a cultural icon in the mid-90s.
Wasn't he the #1 box office draw as an actor at one point?
In the 90s, yes.
Neo.
Yeah.
He was going to be Neo in The Matrix. That's how big he was at that time, right? So there was a time where every summer there was a Will Smith movie coming out where he played the coolest guy on television. And to see somebody kind of put through the ringer like that, and the other thing that's interesting about it is like so not only is that true, but also she's when we read these articles, right, where they kind of announce all this stuff that's happening and all of these revelations are coming out, I just kind of roll my eyes and I just kind of scan to the last paragraph. I'm like, when does the book come out? And yes, of course. So she's ruining even more of his life, all because she wants to sell her new book.
I have this image in my brain of 10 years ago or whatever, before when they first got married. I don't know how long ago it was, but she's in the woods with a bunch of other crazy women in a circle, dancing around
the Wicker Man,
dancing around a pentagram,
the Willer Man,
putting a spell on Will Smith and about how she's
it's funny you brought that up, Matt, because
life,
they met in 94.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. She was technically the bigger actor when they first met. Keep that in mind. She rode him to the top. Man. Okay. She met him right when he was on the cusp of becoming Will Smith and forgetting the Fresh Prince. Right. This guy was the topmost of the popmost in the 90s. You're absolutely correct. I don't know how she even got a career. Maybe she was one of Cosby's early chicks. I don't know.
I mean, people don't understand. I mean, the younger people, that how big Will Smith was. Will Smith was a guy who had, like, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was huge. It was a huge show, but he was also a mega musician, music star in the rap world. And he was competing with these guys.
Well, he reinvented himself at least twice. Yeah.
But he was putting music out that would be #1 hits. But he's in a time when, rap music was F-bomb this, F-bomb that, bitch this, bitch that. He wouldn't say a swear word in his music. He was very wholesome, clean cut, all-American, fun Will Smith. And everybody loved him. Moms loved him. Kids loved him. Everybody loved this guy. So to see him go down this weird path that he's gone, that culminates with him slapping Chris Rock, it's been a very strange road and journey for me to watch. It's very strange because everybody loved Will Smith. And honestly, I still like Will Smith. I want Will Smith to have a comeback. I want him to grab his ball sack and get it back from her. You know what I mean? He needs to take his life back. I don't understand what's going. I feel like he's cursed. I feel like he's had a hex put on him, like she's fucking Worm Tongue sitting next to him, and while he's sitting in this chair, and she's manipulating everything that he does.
I feel like
they're not married. It's insane.
He's floundering right now. I don't think he knows what to do. I think half of it's pride, because she said that she's the one who wants to leave him, but she can't think of a good reason, or she never would, or she never could. So it's really odd how their relationship is. And she kept using the term partnership, and which is true. They are partners in
business partners.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember the name of the company, but it's the logo you see over his movies, and then it's the one that's at the end of the Cobra Kai episodes or whatever, Overbrook Entertainment or whatever the hell it's called. The record is the logo thing. But no, I can't remember if it was Matt or Brett or both said it best. She ruined Will Smith, right? She completely destroyed this guy, and she had zero self-awareness about her. She was that self-consumed to think that people would give a shit about some bitch who was in a show that was a spinoff of Cosby 35 fucking years ago. That was the last time she did anything of any fucking value. Sure, she's popped up in a couple movies here and there. The Nutty Professor was probably her biggest movie.
The one thing that I honestly remember her from is when she died at the beginning of Scream 2.
That's what I mean.
She was the first person to die at the beginning of Scream 2.
And it was a terrible death scene too.
Yes.
I have to say that she will always be remembered as the least interesting character in the Matrix sequels.
That too. And what kind of fuck you is that to your husband?
Yeah, because he was going to be Neo. Holy shit, I forgot about that.
And I mean, she claimed that she asked him about it, but bullshit, that conversation went the way that she claimed it fucking did, probably.
Yeah,
I guarantee it.
You guys know what's funny, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, which is basically like Jada Pinkett-Smith is another Amber Heard, except like she's not
it's an emotional thing.
Yeah, she's not physically abusing Will, but she's mentally and emotionally abusing him. And it's very obvious that she's been lying a whole lot in the press, like talking about how Chris Rock asked her out on a date. Chris Rock's like, that never fucking happened. Like she's constantly lying and getting away with it and being protected by the media. And Will Smith, because I guess he loves her, he's not calling her on any of this stuff. I'm just wondering, like, how does she have such a hold on this guy when she's obviously just a terrible, like, Amber Heard Part 2?
I mean, some people have been positing that she knows something about him, maybe. But if that's the case, you think by now she would have said it. Like, she has trashed this guy so hardcore at this point. I really think it's just a matter of I don't know how he knows. He doesn't know how to react with and still keep his cool and be seen as Will Smith still.
The thing that they said was like he had like a traumatic childhood, and that he's talked about the idea of creating this like perfect family life that kind of almost conquers what happened to him when he was younger, right? And she's taking advantage of that. Watch the clip where she's like recording him in a hallway in his own house, and she's basically like berating him, and he's like, I don't
treating him like a child,
just treating him like a baby. And when he tries to assert himself, she basically makes fun of him for it. It's insane.
Well, what's also crazy is Will Smith is a big enough star where he could pretty much get any woman he wanted, right?
But I think Brett hit the nail on the head. I think it's because his first marriage failed, and she said it in this interview. She made a promise to him that no matter what, she would never come up with a reason to divorce him. And I think Brett's right. I think he has this thing about keeping the family unit together, right? And because his dad wasn't around so much, I guess, as a kid or something like that. Or they had a rough relationship, and his life did kind of, even though the show was written before he was even involved in it, there was a lot of aspects of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that were a lot like his life. Just replace, moving to Bel-Air, to, I can't remember where it was he moved, but his family did move him out for a while because he was getting into trouble. And then he started doing the rap stuff, and that kind of took him to the next level. And then he went and spent all his money and got divorced before he was like in his early 20s. And he had to reinvent himself again and reestablish himself. And I'm sure Jada has made him think that he cannot survive without her, while at the same time doing whatever the fuck she wants. And honestly, if he wanted to be a man, when he sat her down there and said, well, how do you feel that I fucked, our son's friend? He should have said, well, I fucked Margot Robbie. That's how I feel about it.
Did he really?
Yeah, we all know it. And this is a thing. And I'm not trying to act like this is some salacious thing. I'll be the first to tell you, if nobody's told you before, 90% of the people you see on screen have fucked each other. The way most of these relationships work in Hollywood and in music is they have open relationships. Dolly Parton shocked the nation when she said, they asked, how did you make your marriage work of 60 or whatever many years it was? She's like, we have an open relationship and we don't talk about it. That's how. I guarantee you that's how 90% of all relationships in Hollywood go. And if they're not, they're gay. So what the hell's the difference? Because you get a bunch of good looking people together for 3-4 months at a time, away from their families. Of course, they're going to be doing nothing but buck wild fucking. Okay. That's why people are like, oh, I don't know about the Batmobile story. I said, I believe it 100% wholeheartedly. Because I guarantee you get two people that good looking together in one area. They're like, we can go fuck on the Batmobile. They're going to do it.
Well,
wouldn't you?
I mean, and look, I mean, if you see chemistry on screen, there's
exactly
yeah,
and those two had chemistry.
Yeah, and that's
they
why,
did what, 2 movies together? Yeah,
and that's why Momoa and heard, had no chemistry because he was like, "Bitch, please."
I forgot Jada was also in Collateral, and I love Collateral. So she's
done bit parts here and there, but yeah, like I said, her last real starring role where she had anything that did anything was probably Nutty Professor. I'm not kidding.
There's also something insidious about putting this type of facade on when you have kids and making them a part of this charade that you're putting on for the public, apart from everything that she's done to him, just what they've had to force their kids to be a part of by showing up and having to pretend the same way you do.
Well, look how crazy they are, Brett.
Normal. Yeah, well, exactly, right?
Well, I want to throw this to Culture real quick, and hopefully he can answer this question for a change. Culture, this revelation that they've essentially been separated for 7 years and stuff like that, it makes me wonder why Will Smith reacted as strongly as he did at the Oscars based off of that joke that was a pretty innocuous joke that Chris Rock told about, his wife being in G.I. Jane or like whatever. And like he basically tanked his Oscar win by doing that, where like he's not going to ever be nominated for another Oscar. He's never going to win another award show or like whatever. What do you think was the reasoning behind that if their marriage really was, as she describes it, over for close to a decade?
I think it's already been elucidated here during the conversation. I think he's dedicated to family. His idea of a perfect family. I think, whether or not the public was keyed into the fact that they were separated didn't matter to him. No matter what, he can't admit failure, and no matter what, she can't walk away from a potential, long living payday that he is. So it's a business partnership at best. And it's the most dysfunctional relationship you've seen at worst in Hollywood. But
Vader, do you think that it was going through his mind that if he made this public display of defending her honor, maybe she'd welcome him back into the marriage?
That's what I was thinking.
I don't know, maybe something like that. I mean, if you watch that, if you see it broken down, it's kind of interesting because he actually laughs at the joke.
Yeah.
And then she
then she gives him the death look, and she
says something to him.
It totally changes, and he gets up and goes and does the thing. It's very strange.
I think you're right.
Did her little witchcraft word. She said the keyword in his ear or something.
And she said, didn't she say something recently where she said, she's like, I was surprised by his reaction. I'm like, were you really?
Sure you were
not.
No, I think Matt's 100% right, and Vader's onto it too, because that was my reaction after this whole thing and going through this in my mind, and Culture was kind of hitting on it too. You have the one side of it where they're partnership, the other side of it, this is where he saw his in, and coming from a guy's point of view, this is how we see things. It's like, oh, I see a moment here to be a white knight, right? Whatever it was she whispered in his ear set him off at that moment, because Matt is 100% right. We all watched that moment. Couldn't believe it was one of the few moments I got to see live, because I was trying to figure out how to watch the show through a bootleg stream of it, because you can't watch anything anymore without having cable. So I'm like watching this thing, and I'm like, did I just see what I thought I saw? I mean, is this? And everybody was like, was this staged? But then when you go back and keep watching the video, you're like, no, she literally says something to him. The mood changes instantly, and he gets up, walks up, smacks him across the face, says what he says, and then goes back and sits down, and he means it, right? So,
she's got a spell on him. It's a witchcraft.
That's what I'm thinking. I think you're right.
She's got something going on.
Did she expect him to react that way? No, probably not.
Oh man, it's crazy.
At this point, I mean, yeah.
I just want Will to have.
I do have to get running. I apologize, guys. I do have an engagement at 2:00. So,
all right,
it's okay. We're going to be wrapping things up here in a second. I just wanted to ask you all real quick. Did you see AOC fart in her?
That was fantastic.
In her awesome. Address about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Brett, do you want to cover this real quick?
Oh, my favorite was a meme that said looking at it in thermal video to prove that it's real. I couldn't stop laughing.
That moment, you Brett, you picked it out, because I was going to say it if you didn't. That was so great. I was like, thermal imagery shows, and I was like, oh my goodness. And what's so funny is, if that were, tied to the entertainment business, Parrot Analytics would have picked up on that and said it was positive for AOC.
Yes.
How do we do a live stream in thermal imaging?
Everybody could get like goggles,
because
maybe.
that would be hilarious if we all had like thermal imaging cameras. Because man, my monitor would look way different than what it normally does.
I think I could probably figure it out through OBS how we could do that. Yeah.
Well, guys, we had a lot to talk about today, and we talked about it. Unfortunately, Tom had to run, but check out Tom Connors on the Midnight's Edge channel. They do great work over there. Like he was so unmodestly prepared to proclaim, they do break a lot of scoops. He's usually on the forefront of a lot of this stuff, and he doesn't get enough credit for breaking those stories. But Midnight's Edge is a fantastic channel, friend of the Salty Nerds, so definitely go check them out. Brett, any final thoughts on the topics we talked about today, and where can they find more of you?
Oh, that was a lot of fun, guys. It was fun to talk about that stuff because, like, for me, like when we have these discussions, like I like to go in deep on these types of talks. But like what we cover a lot of, like we'll cover this stuff in the intro. I'll do a lot of the like when we start the show, I'll do a lot of announcements for new projects. But we cover a lot of general pop culture. So getting to go in deep on the Marvel and DC stuff today was a lot of fun. Depressing, but a lot of fun. It was a great time.
That's why Vader's always in a grumpy mood, because we just talk about depressing stuff.
I can't talk about that stuff anymore. It's just too much.
It's almost like this weird callback. I'm like, I almost wish for the naivete of like the Collider era, when you could actually be excited about this stuff and in the shill media. But alas, it's not the world we live in anymore.
I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn about different things in entertainment right now, so I can talk about those. So,
but what do you got going on over at Pop Culture Crisis, and where can people subscribe to you?
Yes, guys, we are live Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is noon Pacific. The show is at least 2 hours every day, depending on, we read all the super chats, so sometimes those shows go longer, but we cover a lot of general pop culture, movies, entertainment. We get into, this week we covered a lot of stuff that did have to do with the very interesting conundrum that Hollywood found itself in with their response to what's going on with Israel and Palestine, because normally Hollywood has their very clear orders on how to virtue signal. This week they did not have such an easy road for that, so we cover a lot of stuff like that, and I would love for everybody in the chat today to come over to the channel and check us out live.
Yeah, and there is an interesting dichotomy, because when I used to work in Hollywood, the old rumor there was like the whole town was run by the Jews, and the Jews were the ones controlling everything. And you would think that in a town where that group had so much power, they wouldn't be so pro-Palestinian. But Hollywood has been weirdly like, there's a lot of like Culture said earlier, there's a lot of neo-Marxism in Hollywood, and right now that is running headlong with this discussion. So having all that going on and seeing how it relates to celebrities who have to use their public image as their brand, it goes to what Will Smith was saying. He's like, when in that video I was talking about where she's yelling at him, he's like, my social media is my bread and butter, it's my public image, and they're walking on, they've got a very, very precarious road to walk right now with all this stuff. So come check us out. It's a lot of fun. Yep, it's a great show, and your co-hosts are just as entertaining as you are and insightful. So definitely worth checking out the Pop Culture Crisis show. I'm a big fan of it.
Thank you.
Well, when I have time to actually watch YouTube, which is becoming
that's the once you start doing YouTube, you have very little time to actually watch YouTube. That's what I like. People are like, "Did you watch this video?" I'm like, "Bro." Yeah. When I get done with work, like the last thing I want to do, a lot of the, like sometimes I have to, right? Sometimes there's people who break information that you haven't gotten a chance to look at yet, and you got to look. But a lot of the times I'm like, oh, I don't know if I got the time for this tonight.
Yeah. No offense, Brett. I just tune in for Mary because I like looking at her.
Most people, look, she's the smart one. She's the intelligent one. She's the insightful one. I'm just there to push the buttons.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't understand, if you're streaming every day, you're spending 5 hours a day just working on that stream. You have like an hour prep time, then you have like a 3-hour show, and then you have like an hour or two, aftermath type stuff. And then there's show prep for the next day. And
yeah, a lot of it for us, it's like finding, there's one of the tragic things is you find a story, you're because you want your stories, for us, because we cut everything up into segments so that can come out later. It has to reach a certain length, right? If you want it to be monetizable, stuff like that. It's this story is great, but it's not quite something that feels like it's going to elicit a full discussion, but finding other stories to kind of marry with those and put them together and finding interesting ways to take those discussions, that's where a lot of the work goes in, and it's a lot of fun. So to call it work would be a little bit of an overstatement. I think it is a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, Culture Casino, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
I had a great time today. I thought you had an excellent panel for a change. I was on here, Brett was on here, so congratulations there on good guest choice. And for what it's worth, Tom is awesome, and he's my hetero life mate. In case you guys didn't know that, so we hang out all the time.
Tom is awesome.
Back to it. I just want to say, in addition to what Matt was talking about, it takes me at least 4 hours to do the 6-minute daily because it's 2 hours of prep, and then I have to shoot a short video now that I've added on top of that to promote it on Twitter to try to grow. But do check out Brett's channel. It is brilliant when I get an opportunity. And again, we all suffer for time, but it's a lot of fun. And gosh, what was I going to say? Oh, check out my channel. I do the 6-minute daily Monday through Friday, every weekday. It's 6 minutes of news, headlines, and analysis by yours truly. I actually love doing that show. And of course, I'm now in a pattern of dropping at least one video on weekdays, absent Fridays, because I'm doing 2 live streams on Fridays. So it kind of doesn't work with the logarithm. Sometimes I drop 2 videos a day, like I did on Thursday. So just keep your eyes peeled, be subscribed to the channel, and do appreciate me, because I'd like to grow. I would like to be as popular as Mr. Kadish and Mr. Vader. It would be nice.
Oh man, you're aiming the low. You're shooting for that low bar.
I promised I would get a buzz cut at a million subscribers. So I think I'm
you'll grow it back out in 2 weeks.
That's true. Yeah, actually, the hair donation is on coming up in just a few weeks after the wedding. I'll be doing the hair donation. So
hey, do you remember?
Careful with that. Careful with that. I had to go blonde.
Do you remember when Vader was going to get a tattoo on his butt if we hit 10,000 subs?
Yes, I do. I do remember that. Did he follow through?
Nobody.
Well, we didn't hit the mark. Yeah.
I said this many subs by this date, and they didn't even come close. I think it was the part where I said we'd live stream it.
I've lived up to every single promise I've made, including the shirtless period of time on my stream. And Vader actually took his shirt off, and if you go back and you watch the end of that stream, you will be horrified. Not because of Vader, but because of me.
Well, you got like 12 pasty white guys to take off their shirts on.
Oh, it was really bad.
I mean, it was naked shoulders, dude. There was nothing to say.
I think if Vader had promised to show his feet instead of getting a tattoo, we would have hit that mark. But Vader, any final thoughts, and what do we got going on in the channel this week?
Oh, final thoughts. I just want to say thank you to Brett for being here. Big fan of your show. It's awesome to have you on here, man. Thank you so much, and keep up the good work over there. It's good stuff.
Absolutely. That was a lot of fun. I'll come back if you guys want me back at some point. I will.
Yeah, we'll go back anytime you want.
We'll hold you
for
to
sure.
That. Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah. But Brett, it's got to be a package deal, because that way we keep off the miscreants from the stream.
That's right.
Perfect.
I want to say thanks to Culture. He's always there when we need somebody to come in. So thanks again, buddy. I appreciate you. It's just a little bit of a text on the Twitter, and you're, yeah, man, I'm there. All right, cool. And you're everywhere. You're like Tom now. I see you all over everybody else's channels now. It's crazy. So yeah, it's kind of nuts. What do we got going on here? We just dropped a review of The Descent, I believe. We got a bunch of scary movies going out this month. It is October, so we're kind of hitting that scary movie theme. We have The Descent coming out. We watched Scream a couple weeks ago. I believe this next weekend we have The Shining come out. The Shining is coming out, and we have a special treat going to be attached to that video, I believe, that we did some stuff with yesterday. Kadish has got his director skills, his hats back on yesterday, and we filmed some interesting little things for that. But that's all I'm going to say about that, because that's going to be fun. We also have our weekly our weekly discussion for Invasion. show over there on Apple TV.
That nobody watches. Yeah.
Oh man,
That's a problem too when you think about it. Like everyone's like, we need new stuff in Hollywood. We
It's
need
bad.
them to make. But the thing is like actually, it seems like Apple's one of the only places that's actually trying to at least
Mhm.
make new stuff, and nobody goes and watches it because nobody has Apple TV.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's very hit and miss. So it's either really good or the worst thing you've ever seen on television. So yeah. So check out our invasion reviews. I think that's about it.
All right, guys. And if you like the content that you're seeing from this channel, be sure to support us by subscribing to either our membership here on YouTube or over on Patreon, where we give completely different exclusive content. So if you're more of the audio listener, like we put a lot of our audio only stuff over on Patreon and a lot of our special video stuff over here on YouTube. But we also want to thank everyone who donated during the course of the stream, because as you know, our goal is to get Matt Vader 74 to quit his job and do this full time. And so you guys really help us do that. Shane H. Wilder, Scotty Dub, Black Magnum, Rec Films Montana, Mo Lester, Joran Falth, Mexican Iron Man, and Tommy Reviews. Thank you so much for your donations this live stream. And I also want to give a big shout out to Jillian N for gifting those 5 Salty Nerd Club memberships. Take advantage of those things, guys. Go check out our members only stuff. It's a lot of fun. We really enjoy doing it. Also want to give a big shout out to criticalist.com, the free speech forward movie review anti-Rotten Tomatoes site. They've got so many great innovations going on there. It's really a fun thing to review movies on. They have apps for iPhones, apps for Androids, and they have a great website too. So if you go to criticalist.com, you can check it out. And Brett, definitely check out that website because there's a lot of cool stuff going on over there.
Will do.
All right. Thank you to our special guest, Brett, for being on our show today. And we will have him back on in the future now that he's actually expressed interest in coming back. But until next time, guys, come back next week. Same salty time, same salty channel. And as always, stay salty, my friends.